My question to the panel is, Iain, after Robert Jenrick's visit to a refugee holding centre in Kent, where he instructed staff to take the welcome sign down and paint over the cartoon pictures on the walls for the children, is how low can this government go in dehumanising these poor people?
Paul Holmes, I've read the basics of this story. I mean, I can't really imagine that any politician would go to an asylum centre and ask for this to happen, but apparently Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, did.
Iain, I thought you'd come to me on this one first. I don't know whether he did or not, to be honest with you. There is questions as to whether he did, and your caller, Richard, is right to ask the question. But what Robert Jenrick is absolutely committed to doing is making sure that we have an immigration system that's fit for purpose and make sure that we have people come in who have the right to come in, but have a very strong asylum system that does detract the illegal migration that we're seeing across the channel. And that's absolutely, as you know, one of the Prime Minister's priorities in making sure that those numbers are reduced. But as for the specific question, I don't know if that's the case. It's not something I'd focus my time on, but if that has happened, then that's happened.
I mean, I get the point that, OK, somebody's come to this country illegally, but the fact that they are here, the fact that they've put their lives in danger, but I'm assuming that they had come across the channel, I assume given that it was in Kent they have, it's just basic humanity to want to provide them with reasonable accommodation and try to make them feel welcome, isn't it?
I think that's correct, and that's why we've made the investment into making sure that we have more immigration reception centres and that asylum seekers and refugees who come here are accommodated in the right way. As I say, I can't comment on the specific accusation or the specific story, but the Prime Minister and Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman have been very clear that when people arrive here, we keep them in good conditions, in clean conditions, and we process them very quickly to make sure that the asylum and immigration system is working for the people of this country.
Alison McGovern, the charity The Refugee Council, has claimed that Robert Jenrick asked for cartoons and pictures of animals at this asylum reception centre in Kent to be painted over because it was a, quote, law enforcement environment and not a welcome centre.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused about what the Tory policy is, actually, because we've heard from Paul just then that actually the Conservative government think it's right to treat people with humanity and provide a welcoming environment, but we've heard nothing but rhetoric from the Conservatives about how they actually want the opposite for the past 13 years. Actually, the big problem that we've got, I think we all know, is the backlog of clearing cases. We could reduce that. Last Labour government did it. That would help people who have a legitimate claim and who we should welcome, because they're some of, the people who face some of the most challenging situations in the world. That would help people rebuild their lives better, and that would also make us more secure because we would deal with any people who weren't supposed to be here. And that seems to me to be the obvious thing. I listened to Suella Braverman in the House of Commons last week, and I just felt she was totally detached from the job at hand, which is clearing the backlog, making sure that we're working with local authorities so that where we've got people who are going to be, making their life here, either on a temporary or permanent basis, we can have good, cohesive communities. That's the job in hand. All of this just seems to be a combination of chasing headlines and being totally detached from reality. So I have to say this whole incident just makes me very confused about what actually the government is trying to achieve, and I don't think they're trying to achieve very much.
Alison,
Paul, I'll come back to you in a minute. Let's go to Yasmine.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's anything confusing about the government's current policy with respect to asylum seekers and refugees. We're seeing a policy that's cruel, unlawful, inhumane and impractical. We're seeing it not only in relation to this situation, but a bill that's going through Parliament currently, the illegal migration bill, that will see asylum seekers not be banned from claiming asylum in the United Kingdom. We will see children, women, pregnant women being detained potentially indefinitely. So they won't even be in reception centres such as this. This is in the legislation. They will in fact be detained. And we've also got, obviously, as we know, the Rwanda deal that will see people being expelled to Rwanda. So I think this is very, very consistent with the government's unlawful, unethical and unworkable policies. And we should remember that 2/3 of people that come through irregular route are in fact granted asylum in the United Kingdom.
My point of confusion was just what as to what Paul said just now, I think their record is entirely consistent.
Well, Alison, everything that you outlined, that was the Labour Party's position, which was to reduce the backlog, to make sure that the correct people who come here can stay here, and to make sure that we reduce the number of people that come here, is exactly what this government's doing. And at every stage, Keir Starmer and the Labour MPs in the House of Commons have voted against those measures. So you need to be straight with the British public on this. You can't say that you want this to happen, but vote against every measure without bringing forward your policy on how you would do that.
But the backlogs got worse. I mean, we put extra
resources in.
Well, but then, so what is going on? Why isn't it delivering the results that you claim that you want to see? I mean, the facts speak for themselves. It's got worse. The statistics are there for anybody to read. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that the National Statistician corrected the Prime Minister on it to say that actually the backlog has got much worse. We can clear it. We did under the last Labour government. And that's really important because local authorities up and down the country know that they want to have, as I said before, strong communities where, people are able to build themselves up after whatever they've been through. And so it's really important that the government actually works with places up and down the country to make that happen.
Okay.
That's what will support, the strength of our country as we go forward. And just having this constant thing where it just, whatever the government is doing in the Home Office, it ain't working. And I think it's about time we had a change.
Okay. Alexander Downer, you carried out this review for the government last year. You were a member of the government in Australia that had quite a, shall we say, trenchant policy towards illegal immigrants. Let's start with Richard's question about the immigration minister and what he's alleged to have said. I mean, that's inhumane, isn't it?
Well, I have no idea about it. I'm the wrong person to ask. I have absolutely no idea. So, given that I haven't heard what he said and I have seen no evidence of what he said, it's not for me to comment on it, really.
But in order to deter people coming to this country in this way, you, having been a member of a government that did introduce very harsh measures in this regard, which, to be fair, did work in many ways in Australia, is it right for the UK government to effectively follow that policy here?
Yeah, so context is everything. It depends what you're talking about. So Australia has a policy of resettling refugees, which and I think at the moment it resettles around 20,000 refugees a year, and I think having a constructive policy of resettlement makes sense. What we in Australia wanted to stop, and what the British government wants to stop, is people coming, of course, not directly from the countries that they might allegedly be fleeing from, but coming from neighbouring countries and undertaking really dangerous journeys on boats, little boats. So after 500 people were killed making these journeys across, in Australia's case, the Arafura Sea, the government decided, a sort of change of government here, but it doesn't matter about the politics of it. The government decided that enough was enough and they wouldn't allow it anymore. And what the British government is saying is you're talking here about people coming from France, is stopping people undertaking really dangerous journeys. And over 700 people, by the way, week before last, drowned off the coast of Greece doing this, making these really dangerous journeys on, and I've seen them myself. They're just rafts, really, not much more than rafts, and paying people, smugglers, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a pop to get on these rafts. I mean, it seems to me it's one thing to have a constructive refugee policy. That is one thing. And it's another thing to deter people from undertaking incredibly dangerous journeys, and that should be stopped. And their journeys, they're not being persecuted in France. They're journeys from France to the UK.
I've been criticised by Peter in Solihull, who says, Yasmine, you've got to be the arbiter on this, who says, Iain, please be accurate in describing boat migrants. They're not illegals.
Correct.
That arrive irregularly and cannot be deemed illegal until an investigation into their status has been undertaken. Innocent until proven guilty.
Well, it would be the same as saying that those fled the Holocaust who tried to come to the United Kingdom were in fact illegal because they didn't have a visa. They didn't have a passport. They came here because they were fleeing persecution. People have a right. And in fact, the United Kingdom was one of the main drafters of the Refugee Convention in 1951.
No, absolutely. I think the reason that the word illegal can be used in this context is because under maritime law it is illegal to cross the English Channel in these kind of rafts.
But it is still not illegal for an individual, no matter how they arrive, to try and seek asylum and try to seek safety from persecution.
Well, there's a difference here between whether somebody is an illegal migrant and whether what the activity they're conducting is illegal. And of course, it is illegal to get on an incredibly dangerous little raft and try to.
It's illegal to cross the English Channel.
But it is not illegal.
It is illegal to cross the English Channel on a raft.
It is not
like
illegal
that.
To do.
I mean, to claim asylum is not illegal.
And how are you to claim asylum when the UK government have zero safe routes?
Really.
Well, Yasmine, they could do that in France. You cannot tell me, or the listeners of this country, that France is an unsafe country for those people to be in. The majority of
people who seek asylum in Europe are not in the United Kingdom. The majority of people who go through France stay in France. There may be individuals.
We had 45,000 crossings last year on the Channel from France.
We are about the 19th country in terms of the numbers of asylum seekers in Europe, the United Kingdom.
45,000.
I still do not think that we should be saying this is also about global responsibility sharing, which the UK is shirking its responsibility. And the UK government, let's just ask you a question.
I think that's an outrageous thing to say when you look at how many people this country quite rightly has given a safe home to. Afghanistan, Syria.
No. So let me ask you a question.
Ukraine.
I'm a woman. I'm a woman and I'm an Afghan woman. I'm a human rights defender and I'm fleeing the Taliban. I have got to Pakistan. And this is a situation I spoke to someone about today. I was then in Pakistan. I was sent back to the Taliban. I found my way and escaped back to Pakistan. I'm now at risk of my life again. How do I get to the United Kingdom if I want to? What are my routes to get here?
We had a mass evacuation from Afghanistan when the situation happened.
We have had 45 people last year and 11 this year under our Afghan
You are still refusing to acknowledge that this country last year had 45,700 people come across the Channel from a safe country in France. This country has a right to say...
The majority of people who come through those ways, 2/3 of the individuals that come are granted asylum. And your government wants to put all of those, including those 2/3 of the people, in detention the moment they arrive in this country, including children and pregnant women. That is atrocious.
No, you see, I think with the greatest of respect, I think we're confusing a lot of issues here. The UK obviously does. There are something like 80 million refugees in the world. The UK is obviously not going to take 80 million people. So it has to have a rational approach to taking refugees, and it does take refugees, whether it takes enough, whether it should take a few more. Let me finish.
Well, what's the rational approach?
You had a huge go, by the way. Let me finish. Whether they take enough or whether they don't take enough is an interesting question of debate, and maybe the Labour Party thinks they should take many more, and if they think that, they should say so. But there is a difference between that issue and facilitating people coming across the Channel on those dangerous journeys. I mean, my view is, by the way, if you think all those people should be able to come to the UK, why are you forcing them to make dangerous journeys on little rafts? Why not send a ferry and bring them all over? Anybody who wants to come, bring them on.
Why not create safe routes?
Otherwise, you have to have a rational policy for refugees.
If you're worried about their safety,
you have to have a rational policy where you work out how many refugees you're going to take and the circumstances in which you're going to take them. And presumably, you're not going to encourage people to make dangerous journeys.
Very interesting,
Don't
sparky
dress this
this is. I'm going to have
humanity.
to end this discussion.